Firefighters give everything to their communities. At firehousefurniture.com, we make furniture worthy of that sacrifice. Durable, comfortable, built to last. firehousefurniture.com.
All right, welcome everyone to episode 56 of APS Radio. My name is Jim Burneka, and I've got three special guests with me today. I've got Cyndi Westfall, I've got Leach, and Julie Paidar. I hope I said that right, Julie. I know the other two. You're the stranger of the three.
It's Paidar.
Paidar, see? See, you and I both get it whenever we get the phone calls of spam. They probably all ruin your name and my name.
Correct.
We can't be a Westfall or a Leach. Right? Now, well, welcome to the show. We've got some important stuff to talk about. This is all going to be regarding the PSOB benefits that are currently kind of up in the air right now with Congress. And, all three of you are widows, and their spouses died from occupational cancer. And so I really want to just kind of talk about the history of trying to get these enforced and just everything you've gone through in the last few years. Because, all of this is really for you guys have happened really in the last 5 years or so. So if, Julie, if you want to start it off with just kind of about the history of like where we're at with these benefits and why and what they are and why they're so important to everybody.
Well, I'll start with a little bit of background because it definitely is personal to me, not only because of losing Mike back in 2020. He had a very quick battle with acute myeloid leukemia. He was diagnosed out of the blue in February of 2020, and we lost him 6 months later. So that was right during COVID, and he had just been in for a wellness visit, which he did every year. So it didn't sit with me that how can somebody be healthy and all of a sudden get sick, and we lost him so quickly. So that's where the story started back in 2020. And when that happened here in the state of Minnesota, line of duty for cancer was not recognized, and it didn't feel right. And so we pushed our commissioner of public safety. It took us over 13 months, but they finally did make a ruling. So Mike became the first cancer LODD in Minnesota. And when that happened, I knew it would be a big step forward in setting precedent for others in Minnesota, but I didn't realize how big it actually was. I was getting phone calls from people, emails from people out of state going, how did this happen? What did you guys do? And at that point, I realized this is bigger than just Minnesota. And so I worked with I have to just give credit. I worked with our local 21. Mike was a firefighter for St. Paul Fire Department, and he was also a firefighter for our paid on-call department here in Maple Grove, Minnesota. And so I worked with them. I said, something's not right. I mean, if we're going to make a precedent for here in the state, with everyone that's reaching out across the nation, something's not right. And that's when we were discussing the public safety officer benefits. It is an existing program. It exists today. It covers some cardiacs. It covers obviously catastrophic injuries, right, that happen on the line of duty. It will now cover some PTSD, but it doesn't cover cancer. 9/11 cancer is covered, rightly so, but it doesn't cover occupational cancer. And that's like the leading cause of death among our nation's firefighters. So I'll give credit to Local 21. They put me in contact with Senator Klobuchar in 2022. And by 2023, she had introduced what we're all talking about today. It's the Honor Our Fallen Heroes Act. So I say that I give you way too much information for background, but it's to set up, this all started here in Minnesota. She, being Senator Klobuchar, felt strongly that we needed to protect our first responders and their families. So she introduced the Honor of Fallen Heroes Act, and she did it purposefully. She did it as a bipartisan effort. She reached across the river over to North Dakota and worked with Senator Kramer so that she could go at it with a unified bipartisan effort. So that's where it started. It started in 2023. We made some headway. Last year in 2024, it did pass unanimously the Senate Judiciary Committee, and after that, we didn't get any movement. So now this year, with the 119th Congress, Senator Klobuchar once again reintroduced the Honor of Fallen Heroes Act. So you might hear everyone talk about S-237. She reintroduced it. Again, it was a bipartisan effort. In the House, it was reintroduced as H.R. 1269. And once again this year, back in May, it passed the Senate Judiciary Committee unanimously. Since that time, folks like Jay, that's on right now, and others that are in our activism group, we went out to DC. We lobbied last year and again this year. And it was truly a group of people that were trying to make a difference for others, because I think, as you mentioned it earlier, losing a spouse to cancer, it's no different than losing a spouse to another form of, whether it be the injury on it would be a fire, a structure, car accident. At the end of the day, we're left with that our spouse is gone. The one that, went up in the middle of the night, went out to help someone if they were on a volunteer department, or they left in the morning and went to their shift to answer the tones throughout that 24-hour period. Suddenly our lives are upside down, and we lost someone that gave to the community selflessly. And so it's been a very incredible and moving experience over the past 2 years to actually work with others who are trying to make a difference for others in the community. And Jay can contest to this as well. There were people that were in DC with us. They had nothing to gain by this. They may have had a spouse pass away from an injury on job. We had some folks that were there that their spouse or their loved one passed before 2020, and they're not eligible for these benefits. And I can get into the specifics on the benefits. But it was people trying, just like our firefighter heroes that we lost, it was people that are trying to make a difference for others. So if I can jump to where we are today, and then it kind of explain why there's your podcast is timely. Right now, our bill is in the NDAA for 2026. It's on the Senate's version. So the Senate passed in early October the NDAA, so it's the National Defense Authorization Act. Our bill, Honor of Fallen Heroes Act, is in the Senate's version. Unfortunately, the House previously passed their NDAA version, and our legislation is not in there. So the reason why I say this is timely is that right now, both the House and the Senate are working to figure out which things stay in the final version of the NDA. So with our bill being a non-defense amendment to that bill, from my understanding is that the folks in the House are really leaning towards the Judiciary Committee, because that's where our bill would have gone to get approval. So with you in the great state of Ohio, there's Jim Jordan, Representative Jim Jordan, who is the head of the Judiciary Committee. We really need folks across this nation reaching out to their House of Representatives, their legislators, and having them reach out to Jim Jordan to say, please, and keep this included in the final version of the NDA.
Perfect. Now,
Sorry,
Julie, no, I appreciate it. I think it's important to actually, before we even go any further, to talk about what exactly these PSOB benefits are. Yep. So, Julie, I don't know if you want to answer that, or Jay or Cyndi, you can jump in too. Whoever.
Let me start. I'll just jump in, and then I'll give Jay and Cyndi some time to talk too. So right now with the PSOB, the Public Safety Officer benefits, this is for police and fire. So if you are killed in the line of duty, or you're injured, just to be upfront, there is a one-time monetary benefit, a payout, and there's also educational benefits for the children or the spouse. So that's why it's not, and thirdly, and most importantly to me, it recognizes the sacrifice that our loved one made. So to be able to say our loved one paid the ultimate price, to have the federal government then come back and say, yes, we recognize that line of duty death. And then if you were injured, disabled, there would be a one-time payout for that. And then you could get some educational assistance. Or if unfortunately you passed, you would know that your family could have some assistance. There's also some timeline on this. Right now, this particular Honor of Fallen Heroes Act will be for cancers that were on or after January 1st, 2020. And I think, again, I don't know the real reason, but I think the reason why it's January 1st, 2020 is because COVID, they had that as a start date. So it was something to link up to. And then you would need to have served for at least 5 years before a diagnosis. And then if you were a retiree, it would have been within the last 15 years of your last date of service.
That's actually very similar to the Ohio presumptive law.
Okay.
It's actually really, really similar. That's interesting. Let me ask you this: Are all three of your spouses, are they on the National Fallen Firefighters wall?
Did you say are all what?
Are
Yes,
yes. So
they are.
Wait, I didn't hear the question.
are they actually listed in the National Fallen Firefighters wall in Emmitsburg?
If they were line of duty, yes, but there are some states that don't recognize line of duty. So had Minnesota not recognized Mike as line of duty, he would not have been out
Okay.
of Emmitsburg.
But you're on Emmitsburg, you're on this wall, and you're surrounded by people that did get this benefit, but there's just a handful of you that are like, yeah, you're on this wall, but we're not going to give you that stuff,
That is
essentially.
correct. That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can kind of elaborate on that, Jim. Obviously, you guys, two, three, well, you all know me. So, I recently retired from the fire service due to PTSD, which came, on from my wife's passing on Christmas Eve of 2022. My wife was diagnosed with breast cancer and, excuse me, of 2017 in May, which is when Ohio's 2017, the presumptive law went in effect. And I know, Jim, you were a big part of that, getting that help passed. And my wife was one of the first recipients of that in the city, or not city, excuse me, in Ohio, under presumptive law. And like I said, she battled cancer for 5 years. And I went back to work after 18 months or for 18 months, and it took a toll on me, and I stepped aside from it. So not only does people get this benefit as you die in a structure fire, it's cover, police officer dies in the line of duty from a shooting or things like that. There's also things that, for me, I find it a little discriminatory because, and I never take nothing away from 9/11. Any firefighter that was there, including the task force, are covered under cancer law. My wife would have showed up one day there to help on the pile, then she'd have been covered. So I just don't think it's fair that we pick and choose what's cancers or when an event happened. So, but yeah, you asked Jim, we stand there next to all these other families, and we all have the same story, just a different background, honestly. And it's sad because we know that some, and Julie mentioned earlier, there's families that are with us that has received the PSOB benefit, and we know numerous families that have gotten it, even locally, from COVID. And I struggle with it because I look at it as, how is 9/11 cancer different than regular cancer? I don't know what you want to call it, but I struggle with that. And our representatives, as mentioned, Jim Jordan is one of them that we try to meet with him, and we get a staffer, and it's never a fun approach when we go there. I've been there the last 2 years trying to get a meeting with him, and it goes nowhere. So every other representative from Ohio, I've just recently, Senator Husted signed on. So we have both Senator Moreno and Senator Husted signed on, which is great. But there's 50, really correct me if I have these numbers wrong, 59 senators on board right now, and 167 House representatives.
Correct.
So, which is a great, it's good momentum, and it's nice that we passed it on the Senate side, but we need the word out to the House. And I don't know what the percentage is. Maybe Julie, you can help with that on how many Congress members we'd need to bypass Jim Jordan, if that's an option.
Well, right now where we are right today, it is truly a matter of don't take it out of the NDAA. So, that's how fast things have changed since we were there in the summer, Jay, is that as things have progressed and getting that into the Senate's version of the NDAA, that's further than we've made it. And so now that we're in the NDAA, but we're on the potential chance of not getting kicked out so that it's in the final version, it's truly we need the House Armed Services Committee members to keep it in. And because this would have been a judiciary issue, is how I understand it, they're leaning towards respectfully back to the Judiciary Committee, which is led by Jim Jordan, to say, do we keep it in? Do we not keep it in? So right now it's truly just, it's not even a numbers game. It's the pressure on the House to keep it in the final version of the NDA, simply said.
Yeah, and I know that there's some members, Jim, you probably know them too, in Columbus, that there's some firefighters that died from cancer in Columbus recently, and that's in his jurisdiction. So his constituents is Columbus Fire. I know that's obviously the major one. I'm sure there's some outlines as well, but getting this word out, maybe having Columbus firemen, and I can tell you there was a Senator Kelly from Arizona when we were out there this past time. He said, you guys should just stand on this front doorstep, all the firefighters and police officers, and and demand this. So that's an option we can do. I mean, I don't know what else to do with him, because we've tried to meet with him, we've tried to sit down with him, and every now and again we get lucky in the hallway that one of our family members or that's been there helping is caught him, so which is good, but I can never seem to find him. So
Yeah, I think all you had to do is actually challenge him to a wrestling match, and that would get him engaged.
maybe,
But-
yeah, maybe.
But this is, correct me if I'm wrong, because this is, I mean, you mentioned 9/11 cancers, and I've watched that show. I mean, it's every few years I feel like these guys are going back to DC, and they're fighting for their benefits. They're fighting for the 9/11 public health act. And the thing that they have that it seems like you guys don't is they have Jon Stewart. And Jon Stewart goes in there and shames every single one of them every time and makes it happen. It shouldn't be up to Jon Stewart to do this. You shouldn't have to have a Jon Stewart to do this. This kind of stuff is common sense. I mean, even in the last few years, even since this started in 2020, the biggest study that we've had, the IARC study, that actually shows that firefighting is a carcinogen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the science is there now. There's no denying that. We have ample studies, and so I mean, it's really, I don't know why they have this attitude. It's wrong, because the research is there. You shouldn't be able to avoid it.
Well, and also
Yeah,
comes down to common
Go ahead.
sense too. And Jay can, he's been a firefighter, he served, and just like Cyndi, your husband, and Jay's wife. But it should come down to common sense. Every day, firefighters and police officers across this country are selflessly giving of themselves to help people protect property. I mean, just in the last 5 years, I think we've had the Hawaii fires, we've had hurricanes, we've had, unfortunately, some shootings now that have taken the lives of firefighters. And we've had, just here in Minnesota this summer, we had state legislators that were one of them passed away and the other one was shot and injured. But at every one of those incidents, who's there? It's the first responders. They are out there, and you could say, well, what are they going to get from a flood? Well, I'm sure there's a lot of bad things in that flood water that they're walking through and putting themselves at risk when they're out in the fires. To me, it really comes down to common sense, and we ask ourselves why. And probably part of the reason is there are so many bills that legislators have to look at every year. I'm not naive to think we're the only one out there that they have that single bill to take a look at, but I just come back to common sense. It is for the families and for those first responders who are out there helping every day. They don't walk into an incident and say, excuse me, are you a Democrat or a Republican or independent? They don't ask what your beliefs are. They are there and they just do their job. So
Can you imagine us showing up on scene and actually questioning, like, well, what party you're affiliated with?
I know
Like,
I get on a soapbox, sorry.
we don't care.
No,
It doesn't matter. You're a person. We're going to help you out regardless.
because you are
And
called to serve.
yes, and
Yeah,
so
I'll say, Jim, too, is the percentage of firefighters that die yearly, most of this is probably union firefighting. The numbers is 70% for the last 8 years. It's been put on the wall in Colorado Springs. 70 to 75% of firefighters that are dying is cancer related. And that's just, it's crazy. The number is why any politician wants to go, what are we doing here? Like, why can't we fix this? And there's so many exposures and as well as a retired fireman that we're exposed to, not only the carcinogen and firefighting and the smoke and the chemicals, but the PFAS and the PFOS and the foams and all that. I know that's a very different topic, but it is, the exposure seems to be going up for some reason. And I can tell you that there's not one oncologist in this world that's going to say, Jay, your wife got cancer on this day. It's not possible. And that's why I struggle with it, like I said, with the 9/11, because yes, that was an incident, but I don't know how I put this. You can't tell me that every firefighter there got cancer that day. I mean, they go on as many fires as anybody else in this country, and it could have happened another time, and that's why I struggle with that. Same thing with the COVID and the other, suicides. It's always a major event that happens. Why some of these are added to the PSOB. And I just wish that they would see cancer it's a huge thing. Firefighters daily are getting diagnosed with cancer across this country. And it's sickening. I mean, that 72% when my wife passed away was the number. I think last year was it 71, Julie, I believe. Or 70%. It's every year it's, in the 70s. And it's just sad. And then you have the families that suffer from this, that, that get denied the benefits when you asked earlier about, we're standing next to other loved ones or firefighters' families that have received death benefits, and we're excluded from that, even though it's a leading cause of firefighter fatalities.
yeah.
And it's just sickening to me.
Yeah, and Cyndi, I mean, you still got little ones. I mean,
Well,
this could really help you. When I say little ones, I mean they're kind of
school
little.
agers,
School agers,
teenagers.
yeah.
So before I get into my story, correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't the bunker gear also have carcinogens in it
Well, yes, the bunker
or
gear
related?
basically comes out of the package with carcinogens added to it.
So my
And
point being,
we're trying to
every
get
day
rid
you
of
go to
that.
work,
Yeah, you're right.
every day you go to work, you're putting carcinogens on your body, or possible carcinogens on your body. My middle child is 19 and he's done the local stair climb a couple years in a row. And I asked him not to wear, they would get him bunker gear to wear, and he'd wear his father's helmet. And this year I asked him not to wear it. And just said,
I had to hold on.
you don't
I
need
had
that
to get
exposure.
I had to get talked out of. Have you ever seen the meme where the guy has the table and he's like basically challenging people to like change my mind? Like, I wanted to go to that stair climb and have that set outside, and I was told it's probably not a good idea. But
Well, no, because Lion is the sponsor. So you probably don't wanna but anyway, so my story is my husband was Clay Westfall. He was a lieutenant at Harrison Township Fire Department here in Dayton, Ohio. And he started firefighting as a volunteer when he was 18 years old. So we're looking at about 31 years he had in the fire service. He passed away when he was 49. From diagnosis to passing was 3 months. He was diagnosed, like Julie's husband, in April of 2020, and he passed away in July of 2020, the day before my youngest's birthday. and I have three kids. At the time they were 20, 14, and 10. He turned 11 the next day. So my oldest is thinking about going back to school. My middle child is a nursing student at the University of Cincinnati. He eventually wants to become a care flight helicopter medic, or nurse. So he eventually will have to become a paramedic, my understanding is, or at least locally. If he were to apply for that job, he has to be a paramedic on top of the other certifications. And then my youngest is 16, and he plays baseball, and he wants to play baseball in college. So, that college benefit would help out all three of my children. Not to mention the core benefit, would help our family out exponentially. And over and above that, again, like Julie said, having Clay's sacrifice recognized, I think is equally as important as our benefit is to us. I started making phone calls back in 21, before the bill was even added or presented to our local representatives, both Senate and House, asking why cancer wasn't included. And then I was telling Jim, I actually hijacked Mike Carey at my son's trip to Washington, D.C., his class trip to Washington, D.C. I actually hijacked him at the State House, or not State House, excuse me, at the Capitol building, and pulled him aside to talk about the PSOB. And at that point in time, it was the honoring the Fallen Heroes Act. I've hijacked other House of Representatives as I've seen them. One was actually at one of my son's baseball games, and I actually pulled him aside as he was watching the game and spoke about it. So it's important. It's something that I feel very strongly about. I make phone calls when I can, and I just don't understand why more firefighters and more police officers aren't making phone calls and aren't sending emails and aren't pushing for this, not only for themselves, if something catastrophic were to happen to them and they were to need the benefit themselves, or for their families after they, if something were to happen and they were to pass away. The one last thing I want to mention on this, Clay's cancer was, he was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and he went fast. But he always used to tell me, when he would go to work, especially if something had happened, like he hurt his shoulder one time and he was off work for a little while, he kept saying, "Don't worry about me dying in a fire. The odds of that happening is very slim." He said, "I'll die from cancer before I'll die in a fire." And he told me that from when we started dating back in the 90s, until, I don't know, a year or two before he was actually diagnosed.
Wow. Because
Mhm.
that wasn't talked about back then. I mean, Jay, do you remember when you started?
Yeah, we didn't talk about it.
No, not at all.
So I don't know if it was just,
It
I'm not sure
wasn't
how it was
probably
related,
till
but
probably 2010s is when really
yeah.
started kind of getting on the radar. 2013 was when the white paper came out from the FCSN that did a great job of really explaining what this was and what it was doing to all of us. But again, since that time, there's been so many studies, so many researchers that have put time into this, and it's not just one thing. Is it the gear? Maybe. Is it um, the shift work? Is it the actual exposures on the fire ground? I mean, there's so many different things, and we can't really tell which one, but it's just from the job itself. We know that much, especially, you know, Clay being a Harrison Township firefighter, they see some fire. and even Tracy and Kettering, she saw some fire too. It might have been mutual aid to Dayton, but she saw fire. I'm kidding. I'm just kidding, Jay.
She did it for 27 years, so yeah, she's seen some fire.
Yeah. So, I mean, the science is there, and to kind of speak to Cyndi, what you were saying about why a lot of firefighters aren't on the phones doing this, I think it's almost like a defense mechanism for a lot of us that it's not going to happen to us. We have this idea inside, this mentality that we're invincible. Yeah, that may have happened to Mike. It may have happened to Tracy. It may have happened to Clay, but it's not going to happen to me. I mean, that's how we have to think, I think, in order to survive. And that lets us do a lot of crazy stuff on the job, but it also hurts us in other situations like this because we don't believe it's going to happen until it does. And
Can I elaborate on that a little bit, Jim? Because
please
I'm
go
glad
ahead, Jay.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I was a firefighter for 20 years, and there at the end of my career last year in December, actually leading up to it, I got to this point where I talked to my chief about it, and I said, "It's not if, it's when." I said we were exposed to it every single day we go on a call. Every time we come into work, even if we didn't run a structure fire, Bellbrook, we don't have a ton of them, but it being a small city, but I worked for bigger agencies and putting our gear on every day. And, being the department you were at, you guys were busy. And that's kind of what led me to say, I don't want to be the next person. I wanted to step aside because you can't prove where you're getting the cancer from. We're exposed to it all the time in firefighting, but I just had that mentality. It's not if, it's when. I didn't want to be the next one. Maybe I'm already exposed to it, and I don't know that. But at the end of the day, it's more police officers are going to continue to perish and die in the line of duty from this, and it's families are suffering from it, and and I've talked to Julie and Cyndi and other families, and like I said, we all have the same story, just a different background, different faces.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you guys this. All right, so let's kind of get to the point. What do we need to do? What kind of action can these viewers and listeners take to hopefully help this get finally to the finish line? I mean, it's closer than it ever has been, but we need that help to get it finally over the hump.
So knowing that this will be airing tomorrow, which is the 13th of November, right? It airs tomorrow.
Correct.
It is really important this week, the 13th, the 14th, and then early into next week, what would that be? The 17th, 18th, 19th. We are truly down to the final hour. And we need our legislators, whether it's in the state of Ohio, Minnesota, Massachusetts, we need those folks that are on the House to reach out to Jim Jordan to say, please keep this in the final version of the 2026 NDAA. It's as simple as that. Have your friends, the fire departments, whether they want to call, guess they really can't request a meeting because they're back in DC now, but call, email, reach out and request that your legislator in the House keep the NDAA, keep the Honor of Fallen Heroes Act in the 2026 final version of the NDAA. The reason why I'm saying this week and next week, I think if in a perfect world, the House would vote on the NDAA probably the first week of December in a perfect world. Probably the second week is probably when the Senate would vote on it. So, until things are all wrapped up, we have a choice to have chance to get it in or keep it in versus kicked out. But I know I'm repeating myself. We need the pressure on to say, please keep it in. We have come so close. We can see the finish line. We just need to get over the finish line.
And I'll make sure to, I'm sorry, Jay, real quick. I'll make sure to put the contact info for Jim Jordan in the show notes, so that everybody will have access to him.
And why don't I send you the link too? It's very easy to go onto the Congress. I think it's congress.gov to find your, you put your address in, you can find out who your representative. I'll send that to you as well, so you can put that in there, because again, if anybody else wants to reach out to Jim Jordan directly, they can't. If we're not his constituents, he won't read it. Your email will be for naught, more than likely. So if anybody can reach out to their legislators for whom, they're the constituent, and have them, write to them, say, please, it's urgent, make a phone call, let them
I
know.
wouldn't just say Jim Jordan. I would, anybody that's on the House Judiciary Committee, and I'm not sure how many members it was. I think, was it 16, Julie, or?
It was over 50. I
Oh,
think.
more than that.
Go back.
Sorry. I
Yeah.
didn't think it was that many, but yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, honestly, the more we get on board in the House Judiciary Committee, the better off we're going to be.
And it's also House leadership. It's Scalise, it's Johnson. We can reach out to them. If they're the folks that are in Louisiana, the ones in New York, to go the minority route, go to the minority lead, Jeffries, and Clark, I think, is the whip. Here in Minnesota, we have Emmer, who's the majority whip. So again, House leadership, Jim Jordan, the Judiciary Committee, and still it's in the Armed Services Committee. They're going to be voting, a core group of them, to make that final version of the NDAA. It's just that they're going back to talk to the Judiciary Committee, get their input, because it would have been something that would have gone there. I'm probably rambling, sorry.
No, you're great. Great. Is there any other kind of final thoughts? God, I'm sounding like Jerry Springer there.
I met him.
You
He was really nice.
Former mayor
Yes,
of Cincinnati.
I was going to say it's in Cincinnati.
Yeah. Anything else that you guys like to add
Yeah, I
before we
think,
get
Jim,
you out of here?
yeah, the whole, again, if anybody's truly wondering why is this so important, it's every state treats cancer diagnosis differently. And my big thing was, when we've met people across this nation, whether it was, at an IFF event or it was the NFFF event. And I have met so many, even though Mike passed, I feel at a very young age, I have met other widows who their loved one passed, and they have little kids at home. And that's why this to me is so important, that since every state does or recognizes cancer differently or doesn't recognize cancer, if we can get the PSOB to cover cancer, then those families with those little kids might have the opportunity to have educational benefits that they wouldn't have had within their own state. So, I know it might sound like a small thing to some people, but it truly would help people out if their families, because you have had, more than likely, you've had either a two family income, or maybe there was only one person working, that was the firefighter. And these families that built their life around a 2-income family or a 1-income family, suddenly you're either half or you're none for income. And so just that little bit can help get someone back on the right ground. And then to know what a relief it would be if they had an opportunity to have some educational assistance for their children.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It doesn't
absolutely.
replace their firefighter, but at least it's, something good can come out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's some young families, Jim, is, I honored a firefighter this year at the National Fallen Fighters Foundation. He was 25 years old and has a 1 to 2-year-old from Tulsa, and died of cancer. That was my first year doing that, and I was hoping I didn't get a cancer family, but I'm glad I did. 3rd-generation firefighter from Tulsa, great family, but very young, 25 years old. And that's, we think when we're getting cancer, we're going to be 20 years in our career. It's not the case. I mean, right there was a prime example of it. So, yeah, and it does help, the younger families that, even the older families. I mean, but yeah, it's very important that we get this passed. I mean, like I said, we're almost at the finish line, and Julie said it correctly. We just got to continue to reach out to Congress and keep it in the NDAA.
Cyndi, you're next.
I'm just going to agree with both of them. They again, phone calls. I believe in the interpersonal. I know they say email, and I know that there's a benefit to email, but emails get lost, they don't get delivered. But I want an opportunity to tell my story, and I want somebody to hear it. I want them to hear it, the pain in my voice when I'm telling Clay's story. And the story of my little family. And I personally feel that's the best way to advocate, but however you could do it. Bulk email period, phone calls, face to face if you have the ability to do it. But yeah, let's just get the word out.
Perfect. All right. So for all you listeners or viewers out there, I'll have information in the show notes on where you can actually contact some of these individuals, and hopefully this happens.
Mhm.
Hopefully. So thank you all for your time. I appreciate on a pretty short notice getting us all together, but it worked out, and I'm happy to be able to get this episode out as quickly as I can. My procrastination for once actually paid off. Sorry. Sorry, Kyle from Firefighter Nation, but
Thank you,
um,
Jim, for
it was
sharing.
it's for the
Thank
better.
you.
So thank you all, and I'll see all you listeners and viewers next month.
Thank you.
Thanks.